Hey gang, this is Ryan from Old School Automotive, and as another video in our continuing series on overlanding, or as I used to call it, 4x4 camping, we're going to do a little bit of a video here on this excellent example of a 2003 Chevy Suburban. Now this particular one is a 2500 series. It's the 3/4 ton, but what makes this a really rare and fairly desirable vehicle is that this is one of 15, just a tick over 1,500 Suburbans that were ever equipped with QuadraSteer. What's QuadraSteer, you ask? I'm glad we get a chance to explore that. QuadraSteer is GM's name for a four-wheel steering system that was developed as a joint venture between GM and Delphi. Normally, on these QuadraSteer Suburbans, you can be kind of, if you're clued in, there's certain little telltale signs that let you know it's a QuadraSteer before you actually see those rear wheels start steering. Normally, there would be clearance lights along the top of the cab. You would have a trio of amber lights in a single housing in the middle of the cab, as well as a single amber clearance light at either corner of the roof. Now, in this particular case, this vehicle was repainted by a previous owner from its original kind of champagne gold color to this Toyota Nardo gray, which I'm kind of like to consider myself a gray man as it is. If you're not familiar with what that is, look it up. But I really like the gray because it doesn't show dirt that badly. In fact, it's quite filthy right now, but it doesn't look terrible. It doesn't really draw a lot of attention in a crowd, which is also cool. And when you're camping, it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, so it doesn't really detract from the nature experience. If you happen to be walking around your campsite and you look back at your vehicle, you don't have like a bright yellow Jeep or some bright red 4x4 truck that doesn't really blend in with the landscape, whereas this gray color kind of does. So I'm kind of partial to it myself. That's just me. But anyway, back to the QuadraSteer. The cab clearance lights, normally a giveaway. In this case, they were deleted by a previous owner. I plan to reinstall those eventually. The other thing you'll notice is that back here on these fender flares are, one, it has fender flares in the back, and two, it has clearance lights. There's an amber one in the front and a red one in the rear. And those were only available on the QuadraSteer trucks, and the reason for that is the QuadraSteer axle is approximately 6 inches wider than a standard rear axle. So in a manner of speaking, this Suburban has big hips, and it's wide enough that federal motor vehicle safety standards require clearance lights, the same kind that would be on a dual wheel pickup. And the final result is that you have to have a trio of lights to indicate that it's wider than a certain width. I think it's 103 inches, don't quote me on that. And then 2 clearance lights at the highest outboard most point. And you also have to have clearance lights on the widest point. So since the fender flares are the widest point besides the swing away mirrors, it gets clearance lights in the back. But that's something you're not going to find. QuadraSteer, it's a super rare option. There weren't a lot of them made to begin with. They were only made from 2002 through, I believe, 2006. They only made about 500 Suburbans a year for like the 3-year run, maybe even less. So there's only about 1,500 that were ever made. There's only about 1,100 of the GMC Yukon XLs, which is of course the GMC version of the Suburban. So out of the hundreds of thousands of Suburbans that were made every year, and the millions of Suburbans that have been made total since the 1930s when the Suburban nameplate originally came into existence, there have only been about 3,000 Suburbans ever made with QuadraSteer, which, if you're talking about rarity, to put it in perspective, the 68 Mustang California Special, it was a 1-year option Mustang that is considered an exceedingly rare classic Mustang, but there was 4,228 of those ever made. That's an exceedingly rare Mustang, and there's still 1,000 more of those than there are of these. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to have been able to found one. If you are really interested in learning more about QuadraSteer, there's plenty of forums on Facebook you can check out. Do a search for QuadraSteer. And also, if you're looking to pick one up for yourself, you got a really good chance actually of finding one in a pickup truck, because the GMC Yukons, or excuse me, the not the Yukons, the GMC pickup trucks, the GMC Sierra pickup trucks, and the Sierra Denali's, there were 15 or 20,000 of those made with QuadraSteer. So you actually have a pretty good chance of running across one of them. Those can be spotted also by the clearance lights, but they have a special composite body side on the rear of the bed that kind of has a flared style fender, sort of like a dually, but not quite. It's kind of halfway between a dually and a regular fleet side pickup. All right, from this angle at the back of the Suburban, you might be able to notice on this one with the QuadraSteer, the rear end is a little bit wider than normal. It has kind of a wider stance, which of course is necessary for the tires to have the room necessary to make them turn without hitting the inner fender. But the added advantage of the wider track width is that it makes the vehicle more stable and less tippy at speed, especially at highway speeds, because one of the cool things about the QuadraSteer system, when you're at low speeds, both the front and rear tires will counter steer. The rear tires will turn the opposite direction of the fronts in order to tighten up that turning radius. When you're going at moderate speeds around 45 miles an hour, the rear wheels don't do anything, and above 45 miles an hour, the front and rear tires turn the same way to allow the vehicle to crab walk instead of having to turn, and that makes it very, very stable for lane changes at high speed, and also reduces trailer sway when you're towing a trailer on the highway.
The towing section of the owner's manual shows that a standard 6-liter Suburban is rated to tow a 7,600-pound or 9,600-pound trailer depending on rear axle ratio. The QuadraSteer Suburbans are rated at 7,300 and 9,300 pounds depending on the ratio, which you'll notice is a 300-pound difference from a standard. This is accounted for by the 300-pound weight of the QuadraSteer system itself.
And up top in the back here, you can see one of the, where's my hand, right there, one of the QuadraSteer specific parts, those three little lights, that's the rear clearance light for the Suburban. And unfortunately, that's an exceedingly rare part because it was only on the Suburbans and Yukon XLs equipped with QuadraSteer. That is how they got the three little lights in the center, and then you see the rear third brake light below that. So try not to break those things when you're loading and unloading gear, and if you do, good luck. It's going to be hard finding one of those as a replacement, so keep it in good shape. Interior is pretty well standard GMT 800. It's just exactly like would be in any other Tahoe, Suburban, or Silverado pickup from 03 to the 06 and 07 classic trucks. But what is of note is the four-wheel steering selector button, which is right there on the dash, and we'll go ahead and we'll take a close-up look at that and show how it works. Okay, now as you can see, we got the four-wheel steer selector button that's located just down and to the right of the entertainment and HVAC stack there on the dashboard. Now, how this works, it's really simple. There's really not a lot involved to it. It's just a simple press the button for, currently it's set to four-wheel steer. Press the button, it changes to four-wheel trailer mode, which has different amounts of steering for the rear wheels based on the fact that you're pulling a trailer. And then you can also push the button to go to regular two-wheel steering mode. In this mode, the Suburban acts exactly like any other normal two-wheel steer Suburban. So if you get into a situation where, like at the McDonald's drive-thru, where you don't want to swing the tail end of the vehicle into the drive-thru window, you can just pop it into two-wheel steer mode and it acts like normal. Something that is of note here, let me go to the wide angle, is if the steering wheel is off angle, it will flash until the steering wheel centers. What this does, this is a built-in feature that prevents the four-wheel steering mode from being changed while you're in the middle of a turn, which could cause the computer to wig out or could cause, unanticipated steering inputs that could throw the driver off. This way, it'll only change from one mode to the other once that steering wheel is centered. So that way, it's fail-safe. There's no possible way that this could cause an input that you're not expecting. It's a really well thought out system, very simple to operate. All right, gang, now to demonstrate the capabilities of the four-wheel steering, I'm here in a housing development that hasn't been built yet, so it's effectively a closed course. There's no other traffic on the road, so we don't have to worry about other cars. What we got here is a cul-de-sac. It's a little bit of a P-shape sweeping to the right, which is why I'm lining up to the left. This is, by having the tires right along the left side of the road, this will give us our baseline to show how tightly the vehicle can do a 180-degree turn. So basically, we're just going to go down into our cul-de-sac, and there is a black tar strip here that once we roll past this into the cul-de-sac, actually we're just going to hit this little concrete pad, and now we're just simply going to crank the wheel 180 degrees, and look how tightly the vehicle turns. Just got the wheels all the way straight ahead, so 180 degrees gets us basically one car length more than a two-lane road. So if you had a three-lane road or a two-lane road with shoulders, you can make a 180-degree U-turn, no problem with that. Let's go back and try this in two-wheel steer and see how much wider the turning circle is. All right, we're lined up in the same place as before. We're going to go ahead and cycle through trailer mode and into two-wheel steering, and we're going to go ahead and roll into the cul-de-sac. As we get to the little concrete utility pad, I'm rolling in full steering, and in order to get 180 degrees of turn, you can see here that we are a full another car lane further to the left before we got turned 180 degrees. So, as you could see from this demonstration, the four-wheel steering adds a significant increase to the vehicle's turning capabilities. In the QuadraSteer Suburban here, we have all the creature comforts of all the other GMT 800 series trucks and SUVs. The interior, the seats are extremely comfortable, arguably some of the most comfortable seats that GM put in their trucks anywhere along their history. We've got steering wheel mounted controls, dual airbags, we've got side airbags on the sides of the seats. The entertainment systems of the day left a little bit lacking, and so in the future I will be planning to upgrade to a flat screen type newer stereo system that's going to integrate a backup camera, which I'll also be installing, and we'll try to bring you a video on that as well. But there's really nothing not to love about the interior. Like I said, comfortable, it's quiet. Even though this is a 3/4 ton, it rides extremely smooth. That's thanks in part due to the auto ride suspension, which came standard, at least as far as I know, in the QuadraSteer Suburbans. There's some that argue that it's not standard with the QuadraSteer, but from all of my research, it does seem like QuadraSteer would almost universally get you the auto ride suspension. And with the 6-liter and the 4L80 transmission, it's got plenty of pickup. It can get out of its way just fine. I've installed a severe duty fan clutch on this particular vehicle, which is kind of why it sounds a little bit like a garbage truck when I accelerate. But I did that because I live here in southern Arizona, where it's getting real hot in the summertime, and all of these GMT 800 body style vehicles have an issue that I've noticed where they will build up a bubble of hot air under the hood. And if you're stationary in traffic or sitting in a parking spot idling and running the AC will quit out on you just because it's not able to get a good airflow under the hood. So the severe duty fan clutch is a band-aid. I do eventually plan to convert to electric fan clutch. An electric fan from a GMT 900 series vehicle and program the PCM accordingly. But the AC is ice cold. We've got the mid-level dual controls. It's not the high-end climate control, which is actually failure prone, and I would like to recommend you avoid in these vehicles if at all possible. And it's not the bargain basement single dial. So if you and your partner are riding along and they're too cold, they can adjust their own temperature for their dash vents just fine. You've got separate controls up here for the rear heat and AC, and if your kids are old enough that they can regulate that on their own, or if you've got adults riding in the back seat, you can simply switch this over to aux, and the control module in the ceiling above the second row then becomes active. Otherwise, you can simply override the rear controls from up here. It's just, again, I can't stress enough how comfortable this is. I come from a history of driving heavy duty vehicles, 1 tons, 3/4 ton pickup trucks, and this Suburban, it just rides absolutely smooth, and I have no complaints. It is just a joy to drive. So there you have it, gang. That's our overview of the QuadraSteer Suburban. It's an amazing vehicle that does all kinds of different things, from 3/4 ton truck type towing and hauling. It can haul a trailer upwards of 9,000 pounds. It can haul all kinds of cargo in the cavernous back area. It can also do family car type things like hauling the family and kids on family trips, going to the grocery store, camping, you name it. This thing does it great, and does it while still maintaining small car maneuverability thanks to the QuadraSteer. About the only thing this vehicle doesn't do well is get great fuel mileage. I'm currently getting around 11.9 miles per gallon, not quite 12, which isn't great, but when you consider this vehicle weighs in excess of 6,000 pounds, that's actually not too bad and reasonably efficient. At any rate, it kind of pains my Ford-loving heart to say this, but if I only had one vehicle for the rest of my life, it would probably have to be this QuadraSteer Suburban, because it does absolutely everything. And to paraphrase an old racer's adage, you can live in a Suburban, but you can't drive a house. That said, it's just a great vehicle, and I'm hoping in the near future to be able to bring you some Suburban specific old school automotive products that are in the works right now. So stay tuned for that. Speaking of staying tuned, if you want to see more content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That way you'll get notifications whenever new videos pop up. And also go ahead and like this video if you haven't already. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me quite a bit in bringing you more content. So again, look for those old school automotive products that are going to be coming in the near future. Check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/oldschoolbell, and like and subscribe to this video, and we will catch you next time on Old School Automotive.